Welcome. The presentation will be divided into the first following parts: an introduction, definitions, we'll do an overview of the country, I will look at the crimes involved, and the policy propositions that have been put forward. And finally, I'll have a conclusion. There is an international struggle to ensure that serious human rights violations do not take place within the context of coltan mining in the DRC. Several nations, international organizations, transnational organizations, civil society have put forward proposals and measures to curb this. Some initiatives are more cooperation centered, whereas others seek to create legal obligations to tie corporations to their promises. We will look at the pros and cons of these initiatives and how they fare in this context. So, what is coltan? Coltan is short for columbite and tantalite. Tantalite creates tantalum, which is a key ingredient in today's growing electronic industry. It is very important and key in the production of laptops, smartphones, electric vehicles, medical appliances, and it's also used in the aerospace industry. Its demand is poised to rise exponentially as new devices are invented. Data shows that it is to double by 2035. Currently, there is no viable substitute to the substance. Coltan has been classified as a conflict mineral, and a conflict mineral is that mineral whose systemic exploitation and trade contribute to human rights violations in the country of extraction and surrounding areas. The Democratic Republic of Congo, formerly known as Zaire, is the largest country in sub-Saharan Africa. It is roughly the size of Western Europe. DRC is one of the poorest countries in the world, and ironically, one of the most mineral-rich countries in the world. Estimates show that it contains minerals worth about $24 trillion. DRC is rich in uranium, diamonds, gold, coltan, tin, copper, among other precious metals. The Democratic Republic of Congo has a very violent past. It went through very violent colonization under Belgium and King Leopold, and in the post-colonial period, it has rarely seen peace. Its first prime minister was killed by a firing squad by the support of the Belgian government. It went through decades of dictatorial rule and has undergone various armed conflicts. It is said to be the worst armed conflict since World War II because almost 5 million people have lost their lives in the process. The neighboring countries also play a part in its armed conflicts because Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi have had incursions into Congo, either to while carrying out military operations, or sometimes even to exploit Congo's mineral wealth. 30% of the coltan that is mined in Congo is done artisanally, which means it's done informally and by hand. Because Congo has a weak central government that is unable to assert its authority, there are various violations that take place within the context of coltan mining. There are various actors within the context of the transnational crime that goes on in DRC. There are also what we can call state crimes, because sometimes the state itself is party to the violations that go on. There's green criminology because the mining activities affect the environment in such a way that air, water, and soil is contaminated by heavy metals. Recently, there has been terrorism going on in the country. An ISIS-affiliated group from Uganda has set up camp in Congo, and there's also organized crime going on. To be specific, the crimes and violations that happen in Congo include child labor, labor rights violation, terrorism, smuggling, money laundering, environmental degradation, sexual exploitation, and small arms trafficking. The arms sometimes are exchanged directly for the minerals. The Coltan mining areas still undergo a lot of conflicts. In Congo, there are very few laws that protect children, the environment, or labor rights. The central government is weak. There is rampant corruption within law enforcement and government offices that deal with mining. And there's external interference by countries like Uganda and Rwanda. Rwanda especially has been accused of being a big player in the smuggling of Congolese mineral wealth, and then they purport to have produced it themselves. In fact, there are cases filed in international courts that Rwanda has lost under these claims. There's also little attention of Congo from the international world, perhaps because of how remote it is. A recent report by Amnesty International revealed that Apple, Dell, HP, and other major electronic producers indeed knowingly or unknowingly use coltan that is tainted by bad labor practices and child labor and human rights violations. It is noted that there are many layers and locations and actors in terms of production, collection, shipping, and processing of coltan that may obscure their supply chain. However, Amnesty recommends that government enact strong laws, regulations against conflict minerals, and companies do due diligence under the business and human rights framework. Two solutions have been put forward. The first one is private regulation, and the other one is business and human rights framework. Private regulation, which came out of the pressure in the sweatshop movement in the 90s, is voluntary and is corporation-led, whereby companies ensure that their products are not created out of the suffering or out of human rights violations in other places or other countries or processes. Whereas the business and human rights framework, which is a product of a UN instrument, seeks to create laws, obligations, rights, and responsibilities on states and corporations to ensure that human rights are followed in all their processes. It also creates opportunities for litigation because corporations can be found liable for knowingly abetting human rights violations in their supply chain. Going forward, the business and human rights framework is the best because it creates certain rights and responsibilities and obligations on states and corporations to ensure that human rights are followed at all stages of the supply chain. This also creates an opportunity for litigation and prosecution when they fail to abide by the business and human rights standards.